Hi, and welcome to the Why Understanding Anxiety Can Change Everything mini program. My name's Charlotte, and I'm a child and adolescent psychotherapist. But more than that, I am the child who really struggled with anxiety to the point where I missed around 4 years of school. And then I'm also the parent who had a child who struggled with anxiety and also missed elements of school. So I've been where you are. I get it. It makes sense to me. But I also know that you're probably here because you feel completely exhausted. You've tried everything. You've probably Googled every sentence under the sun, read the books, looked at research, done so many different things that actually you just feel tired with it all and you are wanting something different. So I am really pleased that you're here. I am going to show you in this mini program the first element of the Parent Insight method. Now, this method is something that I use with parents when we are working one to one together because it really helps you to get under the anxiety. Now, you have probably tried lots of different strategies and you might have even been offered lots of different strategies. But the reality is that the strategies will only work if you understand what it is you're dealing with. So I'm going to use simple analogies and metaphors which will help you hold the pictures in your mind so that when you are in that moment and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do, you have a process that you can work through that will help you to get under the anxiety. So let's think a little minute about the game rock, paper, scissors. If you imagine your child is the rock, okay, and they are quite happily busying themselves with their lives, playing, doing whatever it is young people do, or even teenagers. And then here comes the anxiety. So imagine the paper as anxiety. The paper will grip hold of your child and completely suffocate them. So you're not seeing your child anymore, but what you are seeing is the paper over the top. You're seeing the anxiety. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing, and you are certainly not failing, but you haven't been shown how to get under the anxiety. So, what happens is we talk to the paper, and when we are talking to the paper, it's like the child can't hear us because the anxiety is actually taking it all in. Now, as we work through this mini program, you will see that the anxiety really can get a grip. And you've probably noticed this because I imagine your life, your child's life, your family life has gotten a lot smaller. So it doesn't really matter what the anxiety is. Once that anxiety is over the rock, once the paper is over the rock, you are finding it very difficult to see the rock anymore because the paper is absolutely swallowing it. And so what we need to do is to start think about how we're going to get underneath. And I'm going to show you that in this mini video. So let's think about a Quality Street tin. Bear with me. So we all know the scenario. After Christmas, there might be some sweets left over, right? You might have a Quality Street tin, roses, celebrations, heroes, whatever your favourite is. And you walk into the living room and there's a brand new tin on the table, and you think, oh, fantastic. Now I'll pick Quality Streets because that's my favourite. You walk in, there's tin of Quality Streets on the table, you think, fantastic. The strawberry and orange ones are my favourite, I'm going to eat those. I take the lid off, and inside are baubles. What? I was not expecting that. I was expecting Quality Streets. I was hoping for Quality Streets. I wanted Quality Streets. What I got was baubles off the Christmas tree. Now, I tell you this thing so that you can think about it in this way. When we are seeing our child filled with anxiety, we start to have this idea that everything that the child starts to do or say is because of anxiety. And we stop seeing the child because we are making assumptions that inside the Quality Street is Quality Streets. And actually, when we look underneath the lid, it isn't Quality Streets at all, it's something very different. And sometimes we get so stuck on this idea of anxiety that our child's whole being can become about the anxiety. And actually, it isn't. There are other things going on for your child. And in the Parent Insight method, we will talk a lot about habits, because anxiety can actually pack its bags and disappear, and we can be left with a habit that we are responding to. So we respond in the same way on repeat because we think we are still responding to the anxiety, but in actual fact, we might then be responding to the habit, and that isn't helpful. So we need to think about what's going on under the surface for our children, and we need to think about how we get in there. Now imagine your child has an internal world, and we think about it a bit like a house, because externally we have our external house and it might look one way, but internally, so think about the Quality Street Inn, internally it might be portraying something very different to what's on the outside. And so we need to think about what's inside their internal world. Their internal world can look very different to ours, and often it will, because they're seeing their world very differently to ours. Getting into their internal world can be tricky, and they're not always likely to just open the door and invite you in. So we have to find ways to kind of think about what their internal world looks like. And I'm going to show you 2 ways now how to do that, because these are the 2 ways that I would start to think about how to really start to understand the child's anxiety and what's going on for them. So the first one. You have probably seen that in my branding, I use owls. Now, there's reason for that, because owls will sit and observe, but they're also quite wise, right? They seem to kind of know a lot. And if we see an owl, we might even think, oh, like a wise old owl, they know a lot, they've had lots of experience, because owls are kind of linked with that, I suppose. So I used owls for my branding. Think about putting our owl glasses on. Okay, so when we start to think about what's happening for our child, think about the word owl. Okay, so O, we're going to use O as observation, and we just want to sit and observe our child. We don't want to do anything else. We just want to observe and see what is happening, what they're doing, what the behavior is, and then we want to be curious about it. So the W is wonder. So we want to observe first, that's the O. Then we want to wonder and be curious. What is it that this behavior is trying to tell us? And then once we've wondered and been curious about it and we've taken a step back, we want to go back and have another look, a closer look, if you like, because it's really important to do that. So let's think about school-based anxiety as an example. What is it that that behavior is telling us? Now, underneath anxiety is usually a fear of loss. In fact, predominantly it's about a fear of loss. But we're trying to figure out what that loss is. Now, it might be a loss of childhood. It might be a loss of a relationship, in that the relationship might be changing. So when children start to grow and develop, emotionally and physically, they can start to step away from us. And what that means is that they're growing emotionally and physically, and they're stepping away from us. And for some children, that loss of that level of relationship can be really frightening. So when we're thinking about school-based anxiety, it might be that they're fearful of the unpredictable nature of groups, of the teacher asking them a question, of being away from the parent. It can be a whole host of things. But be curious and wonder what it is that that's telling us. Anger is another huge thing. And if we think about anger as being a tower, the anger is usually the top emotion. But underneath all of those emotions, if we look at it like a tower logistically, quite often at the bottom of that tower, the child is fearful of something. And what is it that they're fearful of? It's not always about being overwhelmed or not being able to manage things, but it might be about what it is their mind is trying to tell us. So the owl glasses are super important. And when we pop our owl glasses on, observe, wonder, look closer, it really helps us to take a step back and start to think about what it is that's happening for our child. I hope you have found this helpful and that you've been able to use it. Work through now the rest of the workbook, and I will see you in a little while to describe the next activity to you, which is really going to help you have a picture of what's happening for your child in their internal world. So I'll see you really soon.